Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Lunch with EFI. We got another full house and another great set of topics to go over today.
Full menu.
What's that?
A full menu.
A full menu. A full menu and a full house. So all the best stuff. And we're going to kick it off here with Jay. He's going to start us off with our appetizer.
Yeah, so it's not that delicious, though. It's junk science. This was posted on Brown University has this website for working papers. I'm telling you, economists, get your act together. I'm really, it's just, I don't want people to think that social science is inherently junk and all research is junk, because it's not true. But they keep producing this junk that's so easily and obviously seen as junk by anyone willing to look at it critically. So this is yet another study on race matching. This is the claim that students do better when they have an instructor of the same race. So this is, and there are parallels of this in different occupations. In medicine, there's a racial concordance claim. In education, it's a race matching claim, that outcomes are better if you have a professor of the same race. And by the way, the obvious political agenda behind all of this work is to help justify racial preferences in the training and hiring process, right? We have a natural aversion and a legal objection to discrimination, but scientists want to tell us that it may be necessary to overcome problems because outcomes are better when we match race. So in this study, they have data from Texas. They have 1.9 million observations in total. With 1.9 million observations, it is not hard to understand one of the many different subtle specifications you could choose to find significant results. And they do. The trouble is getting all of your results to go in the same direction. That's actually hard. Unless the selection bias that you embed subtly into your specification choice all goes in one direction, you have a problem of getting all your ducks to line up the right way. And they have a result that goes the wrong way. Like a big result that goes the wrong way, which is they find that for Black students, the probability of graduating goes down when they have a Black instructor, okay? Because if you go from 0% Black instructors to 100% Black instructors, 100% would reduce the probability of your graduation by 7.6% if you were Black, okay? But the best thing about this study is that they never mention this result in the in the abstract or the conclusion. Instead, and I'll try to find it here, they describe, here it is. They describe the results in the abstract as same race matching improves course performance and reduces course withdrawal with particularly large effects for Black students and is associated with modest gains in persistence. Of course, actually, if you just put that back up, you could see that the result for Black students for persistence is 0. It is. That's the top one, negative 0.001, not significant. It's actually 0. Okay. And then they say these findings highlight how faculty diversity may influence student success in research universities. So now they have results that show that your grade is higher. And by the way, all these effects are really close to 0. Okay, if you think about it, like they're tiny, tiny effects, all of them. But your course grade on average goes up if you have an instructor of the same race, and your but your longer term outcomes are, if you're Black, are either 0 or negative. Okay, and that's not mentioned. They say these are positive results. They only describe the other results, not this result. Also, hilariously, there's a test that they do for selection bias. Is their model somehow biased by people choosing to have a certain professor in a way that would be associated with them having positive outcomes? So to test for this, they use their model to predict the SAT scores of the students. And if it's an unbiased model, it should be a null result. And they find that it's a significant positive effect. But then they say, well, it's not very large, and it's only weakly significant. And then they just move on from there. They have a robustness check, a bias check, that they fail, but are unbothered by.
We're willing to ignore that.
So, now just one last thing. I turned on CBS morning talk, news show this morning, and I saw Roland Fryer being interviewed. And I guess he is a consultant now to CBS, and he appears to discuss whether technology is exacerbating loneliness. Okay, Harvard economist Roland Fryer to talk to us about whether technology is increasing loneliness. And I think this is embarrassing. He's an economist. He has no particular insight to offer as an economist about this issue. Okay, I mean, he's a smart guy. He probably has interesting opinions about the world, but so do a lot of people. But
he has some really great background and work that is actually in his field that is interesting.
Yeah, sure, maybe. I just have such low level of trust right now in these people because, I mean, this is just like they're celebrities or like lifestyle coaches or something because we no longer have friends that we can talk to or priests who could give us guidance. We have all the kind of normal institutions that are actually designed for life advice aren't functioning, so we have to have these faux scientists give us life advice as if this were the result of science. Okay, it's not.
You could just ask ChatGPT. Just talk to that, all your loneliness will go away, and ChatGPT will always tell you.
ChatGPT is designed to affirm. So it's designed to tell you you're right, and
We should do maybe as a topic another time, but there was another recent study that had a bunch of people talk to ChatGPT, but two different bots. I don't know if it was actually ChatGPT. Two different bots. One was designed to be affirmational. The other was designed to actually push back. And the results were not good. People who were getting the affirmation were much more likely to, want to go back to it, even when it was giving absolutely terrible advice.
Right, but I don't think that anyone thinks that ChatGPT is telling us science. Exactly, right? I mean, I think people understand that it's telling us what is the collective wisdom of the internet or something.
You think that's true among like scientists or social scientists, or do you think that's true about the average person on the internet?
I mean, it doesn't put on a lab coat and speak with individual authority as a scientist. And so I think we're still kind of navigating how we think about ChatGPT and its authority. But Roland Fryer is a respected Harvard economist. And then he shows up on a talk show. And honestly, Jonathan Haidt, I don't know how you pronounce it. He also is making the rounds, selling books about how, technology is bad for kids. And by the way, I totally agree with what he's saying. And I totally agree with Roland Fryer having anxiety about whether technology is exacerbating loneliness. But they have no authority from science to talk to us about this. And that's what bothers me, is the abuse of the authority. So similarly, these researchers who produced this study, they have preferences about the consideration of race in the educational process and hiring, okay? They have views about these things. And they may come by those views honestly, and they may be right, they may be wrong. I think they're wrong, but they feel they're right. but they certainly don't have science to back them in their views.
There's lots of examples of this, right? This is the increasing public school spending improves results. Obviously, there is an audience out there that really wants to believe that and will ignore however much data torture goes on, to arrive at that result. And we could probably come up with 2 or 3, 5 other examples like that, right?
The most devastating thing I've ever written is my expert testimony for the state of New York, which is posted on the Heritage website.
On Jackson's research?
Rebutting Jackson's testimony about this. And I mean, because I had been an expert witness in a few cases, I had seen Jackson change his work. So I could see him specification shopping and p-hacking in real time. You could see it change. He was improving it.
Right.
And it's embarrassing. I think it's just embarrassing for these people.
It should be. But they
then,
start little cottage industries, don't they? Right. There's obviously a cottage industry out there for we want race matching stuff. Gimme.
Yes. No
for
question.
Sure. For sure. But there is there's a danger here. We do need expert authority. And if we degrade expert authority, this is a collective real problem. Even if you individually make out like a bandit by selling this stuff, you're degrading your whole occupation and destroying an important source of authority for human beings. That's a problem. But there's also the fact that people do have real world experience, that whatever science you throw in front of them, they will at some point say, I don't believe you guys anymore because I look at things with my own eyes. Okay. And this happened in COVID, but it's also happening in all sorts of other areas. And so, you could do all the fancy econometrics you like to tell me how, as it turns out, outcomes really dramatically improve when you increase spending. And then you have New York schools spending $40,000, a kid, and everyone looks at it and they're like, wow, that's a ton, and it's a ton more than they used to spend, and outcomes aren't improving. Maybe that stuff is wrong, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you remember in the 90s, we started to see economists like contort themselves to claim that increasing minimum wages actually makes unemployment go down.
Oh, they won a Nobel Prize for that.
Yeah.
Cardin Kruger.
Sure.
And then the debunking study that actually failed to replicate their results using actual employment data as opposed to survey data couldn't get placed in this. It's in a lower tier journal and is cited only a fraction as much as the original study.
Mm-hmm.
It's Newmark.
Yeah.
Poor guy, he didn't get a Nobel Prize. He was just right.
Okay, well, we should move on to our main course. That was a great appetizer, Jay. And I'll just say, maybe as a parting note, that someone came up to me last week and they said, I watched that last podcast from the week prior. And they said to me, this is in person. I was talking to the person, and they're like, you can't really trust anything, can you?
Well, so that's what I'm trying to figure out how not to convey that message.
But Jay, look, yeah. I understand the impulse. I admire your motivations in wanting to do that. But I have to say, I don't know how to avoid that at this point. Really. And so you can call me black-pilled and you call me jaded, and they're probably both true. But
well, I put this on economists not these occupations not policing themselves.
Yeah,
is a real problem.
Totally.
Yeah. But speaking of policing, actually, I have no transition here at all.
That works. Let's use that.
Yeah.
Well, this is the topic that Matt was supposed to discuss last week, and we ran out of time.
Okay, so I wrote a piece for the Daily Signal a couple weeks ago about school choice and Islamic schools, and using the example from Texas. This is the piece, and I basically, wanted to wrestle around with the issues presented in the Texas school choice program, and where there has been lawsuits over the inclusion of Islamic schools. So, if you go to the next slide, actually start off with the original democracy, Athens, and this wonderful quote from Pericles, who gave this famous funeral oration in the early stages of the Peloponnesian War, where he said, he's boasting about Athens, right? He says, it is not us who copies the constitution of others. It is others who copy our constitution, right? And he says this: we throw open our city to the world and never by alien acts exclude foreigners from any opportunity of learning or observing, although the eyes of an enemy may occasionally profit by our liberality. So basically I said, okay, well, that's cool. Liberality, as Pericles put it, was part of what made Athens great. It is part of what makes the United States great, right? This speech was clearly, in my mind, the inspiration for Ronald Reagan's description of America as a shining city on a hill, right? I mean, that's basically a physical description of Athens itself, right? But in the piece, I go on to say, okay, but how would you wrestle around with various issues? How would Pericles deal with various issues, right? So, for instance, I raised the example of, what if the Spartans started buying farmland next to Athenian naval bases? Would Pericles just kind of like hand wave that off? Like, oh, that's cute. Our inherent greatness makes that non-problematic, right? However, Pericles would have dealt with that. Here in the United States, we have both the federal government and state governments putting a stop to it, right? They have reasonable concerns about both espionage and sabotage, right? So,
but I think there is a bit of a trap here for people intellectually when it comes to speech and not actions like purchasing land, right? Because there we can imagine that they're installing espionage devices, or perhaps storing
setting up
weapons.
biological weapons labs, as we
right. All of which we clearly could see as illegal and opposed. But what about ideas? So there's this argument that, well, look, the best way to combat a bad idea is with a good idea. You shouldn't forbid bad ideas. And so if our enemies wish to come and speak to our children in schools,
yeah,
K-12, universities, social media, no matter how much they are speaking, it's just speech, and therefore unproblematic, because the good ideas will prevail. And in fact, they're sharpened by exposure to the bad idea.
All right. So this Texas example is going to get directly into those issues. Okay. So in 2025, Greg Abbott muscled a school choice ESA bill through the Texas legislature, but using a previous piece of legislation, he also designated the Muslim Brotherhood and the Council on American Islamic Relations as foreign terrorist organizations. Okay. And I read the proclamation that did that. And let's just say, I don't think this is something that Abbott did casually. There is ongoing litigation about that. I'm sure that those two organizations are challenging the constitutionality of the law that allowed Abbott to take that action, and it remains unresolved. Okay. So subsequent to that, we get into the school choice program, and the state of Texas was in various ways delaying the onboarding of Islamic private schools into the ESA program. Okay. Now, this is a ruling from the federal judge that basically forced the state of Texas to stop doing that. Okay. And
Stop slow rolling them.
Yes. I mean, it wasn't even slow rolling. It just wasn't happening.
And to be clear, they weren't slow rolling schools specifically because of their attachment to a designated terrorist organization, but because they were Islamic schools. And so there was a little bit of sloppiness there, right?
Well, that is what the judge ruled.
Okay.
The state of Texas contended otherwise, but the federal judge made a very stark ruling, which is up on the screen here. You can read, and basically, the key language that I would point to is actually on the next slide, right? Which is underlined with my advanced graphic skills, right? The judge rules plaintiffs do not challenge a neutral rule, a lawful eligibility standard, or a reasoned finding of noncompliance. They challenge religious discrimination, the state's unexplained exclusion of otherwise qualified Islamic schools from a program that remains open to thousands of other private schools, including schools affiliated with other faith traditions. Okay. All right. So I see a trail of breadcrumbs here, right? Basically, what the judge has ruled is the First Amendment does not allow the state of Texas to exclude schools simply because they are Islamic. Full stop, right? And that is a very clear precedent that, the United States Supreme Court has actually been setting for decades now in school choice litigation, right? That the neutrality standard, right? Government has to be neutral towards religious groups, neither discriminating against them nor in favor of them. Okay. But the little underlying phrases, neutral standards. Okay. I think this points a way forward for the state of Texas. And there are examples of this from other choice programs, including the Cleveland Scholarship Program, which passed in 1995 in Ohio. And it includes language excluding schools that advocate or foster unlawful behavior or teach hatred of any person or group on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, or religion. Okay. Now, the advantage of this is it is completely religiously neutral, right? You could be a communist school and do this. You could be an atheist school and do this. You can be a completely secular school and do this. You could be a religious school and do this. If you do this behavior, right, you could be excluded from the program, right?
Well, but you would have to first give permission for them to operate, find that they have failed it, and then exclude them, or could you exclude them in anticipation of the belief that this is what they would do if they were given permission?
No, you certainly could not do the latter of those two things, right? You cannot exclude people based on their religious affiliations.
Well, no, it would have to be based on some reason to believe that this was in their curriculum prior to their opening, right?
I think this would get into if you have a reasonable doubt that, and I think, okay, so mechanically, right, I think what Texas is fumbling towards is you could have schools sign an affidavit, and this is not purely religious because Governor Abbott has also taken the same act or very similar action against the Chinese Communist Party, okay, which last I checked is not religious, okay. But there has been, this mechanism suggested, which is schools would sign an affidavit that basically said, we don't have any affiliation with the Chinese Communist Party, with the Council of American Islamic Relations, or, or the Muslim Brotherhood, and sign that affidavit upon reasonable suspicion, right? The state of Texas could investigate that, right, to see whether you violated that affidavit or not. Okay. That is a separate mechanism from these two things that exist in other choice statutes. Okay. The Indiana statute is even more robust. It in fact, this is a little difficult for me to swallow, quite frankly, but the Indiana voucher statute contains a lot of very specific civics requirements, okay, including having some copy of some Hiawatha's letter to some, I don't know what it is, right? Like present in your school. That makes my spidey sense tingle, but whatever. Okay. But then it also makes any school advocating for the violent overthrow of American government ineligible to participate. Okay. Again, you could do an affidavit. You say you're not doing this. If you have reason to suspect that you're violating that, there could be an investigation. In other words, I think that the standards that we need to apply in these things should not be based on religion. They cannot be based on religion because of our First Amendment jurisprudence, which I think is quite appropriate, but they can be based on behaviors, right? And also, the eligibility to participate in a choice program is not the same thing as, you don't have to participate, right?
Well, this is not quite behavior, right? Advocating for the violent overthrow is actually constitutionally protected speech.
Yes.
As long as it's not.
It can also be a neutral standard by which you can.
It is neutral, but it is speech, not.
Yes, you retain your First Amendment right to call for the violent overthrow of the American government.
You just are not eligible to participate in this program.
Not eligible to participate in the school choice.
You can go stand on the street corner and knock yourself out.
Absolutely.
Right.
I think that is from my discussions with people is the most viable path forward. Right. You clearly cannot exclude there cannot be a presumption of guilt against every Islamic school in the state of Texas. Right. Mm-hmm. That is not going to fly. And the courts will continue to administer beatdowns if that's the course that people choose.
It sounds to me like they'll figure this out, right? I mean, there are models. The courts will appropriately punish them. They'll adapt, right?
Well, possibly, yes. I think there is some danger that, you could wind up having a federal judge oversee the program if certain types of actions continue to persist despite court rulings, right? Which is not something I think anyone would want to see.
And one thing we should avoid too is minimizing the threat of the jihad school. And that is something that some of our friends in libertarian world and parts of school choice world have been doing, which is like, this isn't really an issue. It is an issue, and we actually have videos that schools have posted on their own sites in Arabic, where they're chanting about beheading the infidel and things like that, and that obviously isn't something that we should be subsidizing. It's insanity.
But that's just speech.
It is. What's that? It's just speech. All right, just speech.
And it's speech the best way to combat bad speech with good speech?
Right. Well,
that's what they tell me.
It's speech that I think that argument doesn't apply to children, and also it's a form of insanity that the taxpayer shouldn't be expected to subsidize. But it's not the only insanity going on right now. We have a few minutes left for the insanity in South Carolina, and so I thought we should pass over to Matt Nielsen.
Yep, and I will be brief on this. There are two issues that are going on in South Carolina that have gone on so far just in 2026. The first one is the ESA, the ESTF program had an opportunity to have the cap raised from 15,000 participants in the state. That actually got reversed down to a potential reduction in the cap from 15 to 10,000, which was proposed by Senator Hembry, who is the Education Committee chair in the South Carolina Senate, by the way.
You sure that's not Stephen Colbert?
He's he's moonlighting as a South Carolina senator. But yeah, this is crazy. That they've made all of this progress, 2 steps forward, 1 step back now. And luckily, a lot of the senators who had gone along with this originally saw it for what it was and said, wait, we didn't realize we were voting to reduce the cap to 10,000. We actually don't want to do that. The right move was actually to increase the cap, but that didn't happen. So that's issue number one. The other craziness that came out of South Carolina was, let me see.
Nikki Haley's son.
Nikki Haley's son.
Uh,
That too.
I'm
I'm going to show you. Let's see if I can. Oh, I have to remove a couple of these. Hold on now.
But to be clear, Matt, in the end, they neither raised nor lowered the cap.
That's right. It stayed the same. The fact that it was even on the table that it should be lowered is crazy.
Yeah.
Coming out of a Republican senator. Okay, so these three items here have something in common. Matt gave me this first one here. Anti-personnel devices was something that Nixon called bombs during the Vietnam War. Unhoused persons, you can't call them homeless people anymore. And charter school accountability. These are all euphemisms. That's what they have in common. Here is my example for that. Senate Bill 454. It passed, like a lot of these things do, on just while everyone is out getting their coffee in the morning, it gets put on the agenda first, quickly called for a vote, and passed. That's what happened to Senate Bill 454. Thankfully, a few of the absolute worst provisions of this bill were pulled out, but the bill, largely stood as it was first introduced by, again, Senator Hembry. This guy's
so what's going on? Why is South Carolina problematic in multiple ways? Just this guy? Is there something about the political situation there?
So yes, it is both. And it's complicated, but yes, both and the political situation there is there's been an ongoing battle with one of the charter authorizers, which was in South Carolina. Like in many states, you have institutes of higher education that can authorize charter schools. That is the case in a lot of states, not all, but in South Carolina, they can do that. And so there are, to my knowledge, two that do that. One of those has been a comedy of errors, and it has been a train wreck, and just fiscal mismanagement. I don't know that anything was purposely done badly or wrong, but it was done badly and wrong. And so there are some fair criticisms there. The problem is the resolution that they've come up with to fix all of those issues was ham-handed and heavy-handed.
So this is regulate scandal away.
This is exactly what they're doing.
Right.
And so it's a problem. It consolidates power. This bill, which was already signed by the governor, it consolidates more power around authorizers that individual charter schools should have continued to hold.
Are there national charter advocacy groups weighing in to protect?
Protect the authorizer. Yes.
Well, or just what's the landscape? Isn't that there are people who give millions of dollars to these, right? What are they doing?
So no, there's one group that's calling out the insanity. The Alliance for Education Freedom puts out a scorecard and put out a scorecard for both Hembry and, on the House side, Education Chair Erickson, and put one scorecard out about 8 weeks ago and updated the scorecard in the wake of Senate Bill 454's passage. And that's about it. There are no real efforts nationally to weigh in on this. And
probably a better question might be, did any of these national groups actually write this bill?
Did they?
So
I don't know that they did, but it wouldn't shock me.
No, it wouldn't. What I know about it is I don't know anything about a national group. I do know about local groups that absolutely weighed in. and one of them is an authorizer, which makes sense. They want more power and authority unto themselves, and they got it in large part. So,
what about parents? Are parents organized and weighing in?
There is a charter school association, or it's the South Carolina Public Charter Alliance, I think it's called. They are doing the best that they can in organizing parents. They did the best that they could during the arguments and hearings. And they did, like I said, there were a few provisions that were pulled out that were particularly harmful and egregious, but it wasn't enough to stop the passage of the bill. So anyway, bad. This. I don't want to diminish the importance of this by saying that what I'm about to say, but it is just the latest in a long string of examples that we could all come up with about additional regulation, about the failure of groups to either show up or weigh in, or however, that combination of all of the different factors that go into just bad policy at the state level. When we should be continuing to make gains, we don't. We maybe take our eye off the ball and say, great, we got universal now. Yeah, it's universal, but it's capped. And great, we got charter schools and things are going great. Right, but now we're adding regulation. We're turning charters into districts. So anyway, that's a wrap on the dessert. And
delicious. And I think your sofa and my sofa agree. And I don't know what the bookshelves that Jason and Ladner have to say about this, but just noticing that we have a sofa versus bookshelf war here.
Oh, wait a minute! You both have a bookshelf on.
Yeah, a little bookshelf.
Well, right. It just shows that we center relaxation,
work-life balance here
over erudition. Well,
all right.
You guys are.
I think in summary, expertise good, junk science bad, religious liberty good, terrorism bad, and charter schools good, harmful regulations bad.
Yeah,
that's kind of a tautology at the end there.
It's good. It's good.
Smart regulations, maybe smart regulations are good. I don't know. We'll save that for next week.
Right.
Smart sofas.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you being here, to all of our co-hosts and to our viewers. And we'll see you again next week.
See you all next week.
All right. Goodbye.